Okay, Yerushalmi Sotah Daf of Zayin, and we're on the bottom of Daf Chavav Amid Beis. By the Gemara, talk to Gemara, Bab Yom, quoted the Mishnah, Bab Yom Dosh Rabbi Kiva, Umadoisim Echutz Le'ir. So, talk to Rabbi Eliezer ben Ashubi Yosek Lili Yom, Alpaim Amma Tchum, Oriel Viyim. So yet Alpaim Amma, that was the Tchum that surrounded Oriel Viyim. Tzemehem Elef Amma Migrash, so 1,000 was a migrash. Nimtza revia migrash, v'ashar sadis ukram. So it turns out a quarter was a migrash, and the rest were sadis and the kram were fields and vineyards. Now it's a little bit of a mysterious statement. So the Gemara elaborates, Rabbi Shmuel Rav Yitzchak b'Shem Rav revia me'elef. It's 1,000 of elef. In other words, on each side, since you had an area of 1,000 surrounding um, the area. I'll try to demonstrate. So if you can see this, so you see you divided top and the bottom. So each square here is 2,000 by 2,000 amos. Half of it is 1,000 amos. Now, that 1,000 amos was spread out around, would be around this, was surrounded around, it surrounded the city. Now, so the the all around it was near 1,000 amos. Notice the height was half of that, which would have been 250, which is a quarter of 1,000. Let's just look carbonate for a second. So the carbonate, the last carbonate on the Amid on Daf Chafam and Beis, in the bottom, Revim Elef. Elef the Migrash Hainu Bet Starfus Cold Stade Ear. Notice all the surroundings together total 1,000. So it comes out that on each side you actually had 215, 250, 250, and 250. 250 times 4 is 1,000. The whole side like we said. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, afilu tema revia mikol tzad reviahu man demar ba'aba garbin boy ashitzer. So we'll go through the Carbonaida, and again we'll keep in mind this diagram over here. So, Zukta Karbonaida, Gasino Philotema Elef Mikol Tzad Revihu. Elef is actually the quarter, knows 1,000 is the quarter. Vachapirushim. Zukta Karbonaida, Meshkachaslo. Beirshi Alpaim Alpaim. You have a city that's 2,000, 2,000 squared, like you can see in the middle. Kishnoisen Alpaim L'chol Tzad. Chalkois Be'emtza. Hareshtei Ritui Shal Alpaim Al Elef. L'chol Tzad. So if you look, you have the four squares around the city, right? So, and he split each of those four squares, not drawn to scale, into two. So what do you have? So each square is 2,000 by 2,000. So if you split that in half, you have 2,000 by 1,000. Hooray, turns out you have a total of shmoina ritzuis, right? Each square, there's four squares around the city. Split into two is 8 ritzuis, shalapayim el elef, which is 2,000 by 1,000. Shein tes zayin elef, which is 16,000, right? If you add up all the sides, you have 16,000. Well, the Migresh, Noisnin, L'chol tzad alpayim al elef shein shmonis alafin. So the migrash, that's the area surrounding, was 2,000 by 1,000. So that's 8,000 altogether. The kronos nami shisha sa alfe avian. The kasava de migrash kronos. If you look in the corners, obviously it didn't surround the city like a circle. You had it in squares. So the corners, those empty spaces here, 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 and here were empty, but they would also count for space, right? There's obviously a space there. So nimtza migrash l'chol tzad elef amma hareches alaf amma, right? So it's 8,000 amos. But tchum lamed beis elef amma. The tchum altogether, right, is 32,000. So it comes out a quarter of 32 is 8,000. No, the Carbonated man de marba arba garbin boy ashitza would have so habola rabbis arba oitris if you're coming to square row of four oitris shemi called sad arba tzarch shisha also, so you have 16 altogether. We said v'ochinam etzrichan lamed beis elef amos, so you have 32,000 amos could appreciate like we explained. So 8,000 is a quarter of 32,000. Okay. Reb Mona Mishai Kadol Levenus. Reb Mona was Mishai like this Levenus. So Machlokes here will go with the carbonate. It's the easier pshat. Levenus is a square. So he demonstrated what we have over here in the paper. He demonstrated it as a square, and he surrounded it with squares like we did on the drawing. Reb Oven Mishai Kadol Ritzua. He had he used to demonstrate this. He demonstrated the math with a a Ritzua strip that was the Korban Carbonada that was Dalid, Tes Zayin Amma. So just to demonstrate, yes, a 4, right? So he used one that was 16, which again, 4 is a quarter of 16. Rabbi Shaya Mishai Kado the Sikrin. So he used, again, the carbonated tup shatim over here. So he either used sacks of tuah to demonstrate it, or he used like a red dye to demonstrate it. But just did the hands-on math. Amar Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Bun, Chamshin a Chamshin beis saw, 50 by 50, famous, that's a total is one beis saw. Mos a Mos, 100 by 100, so as you double each of the 50, now you have a beis Abbas son, so 100 by 100 is 4 saw. And the Gemara says a story, Reish Galusa, Itlik Ilui Chat Triklin Arbon Alabon de Meline Chitim. There was a Triklin, a local tax collector, demanded of the Reish Galusa to give him a room full of wheat, that the room would be 40 by 40. Also, the Gabi Rav Huna didn't know what to do. There's a lot to put up. There's a lot of wheat. So Rav Huna says to him, Amalei says to him, Paisun, the Yasminoch Esnal Esrin Kedain. The esnanesa bosses man. So he says, tell him that you'll give him, you'll pay him you'll break up the payments and you give him two payments. In the first time, you'll fill up a room 20 by 20. You'll give it to him right away, and then after a certain amount of time, you'll fill up the room again with 20 by 20 with wheat, and you give it to him then. Vat mitga palga. Now you're going to save half, because obviously what he counted on Rav Huna, the Kabbalah explains, is that the tax authorities wouldn't realize that two rooms of 20 by 20 don't equal, it's actually half of one room of 40 by 40. So the Reish Galus actually it would be Maviach, that half that he's not going to have to give them. We don't drill through the mountain. We only use a rope of 50 amma to drill through the mountain. Again, when you have to drill, you have to measure the space. So in certain circumstances, the way, right, if you have flat, it's easy. If you have a mountain, so the way they measured on the mountain was, you had one person standing, and he would hold a rope against his chest, and the rope would be no longer than 50 amps, because otherwise it would sag, and the next person would hold it down by his feet. So you would have basically straight, like that, and you would get the shortest point, and therefore Kadron knows drilling away, knows you were drilling away the mountain. So it was almost as if the mountain wasn't there. So he didn't measure the up and the down slope. So when we came to measure the Arei Halviyim, so the Alpaim Amma that we just learned, which is why this is over here. So those Alpaim Amma we were not Mekad the mountain. In other words, we measured the up and the down slope of the local mountain. And the same thing for Egla Rufa. When it came to measure where the mace was closer to which city, they measured up and down a hill. So when it says Nicha, command Elf Amma Migrash Alpaim Amma Tchum Shabbos, so it makes a lot of sense. Baran. Command Damar Elef Amma Migrash Vapayim Amma Sadas Ukramim. So Klum Lamdu Tchum Shabbos Loy Merovi. Leke Mekadadin Utfel Mekadadin. So the Gemara asks, according to the Shita that holds that according to Rabbi Akiva in the Mishnah, who holds that the Tchum Shabbos is not mefurish in the pasuk. So, and the Arvim, you're not Mikado. Okay, makes sense, fine. But if you hold that we learned Chum Shabbos from the Ar Leviyim, which was Rebbe Eliezer B'Shavesi Aglili, so if you hold that, you learn it from the Ar Leviyim, try to come on and understand. You're telling me that for Ar Leviyim, you're not Mikado, we just said. But for Shabbos, for Chum Shabbos, which you learn out of Ar Leviyim, then suddenly we are Mikado. So the Iker, which is Ar Leviyim, you're not Mikado, but for Tfeilah we do. Okay, Mara doesn't give an answer. Freit Gemara another kasha. How do you didn't bury people in the Arlavim? So Rav B'Shem Rabbi Yosef B'Chanina, as it says in the pasuk, Migrushem Yula v'Hemtol Rechushim L'Chol Chayosim V'Hemtol Chayosim Nitnu. They're given for your livestock and for living, but Loi Nitnu Likfu. They're not given for burial, so you can't bury people there. Halacha Dal Zok Mishnah Bab Yom Tov Shavei Kiva. Again, this is all in that same day, these several Mishnayos that we have over here. Oz Yoshim Moshe Bnei Yisrael Sashir Azois Lashem Vayomru Leimor. She'ain Talmud Leimor V'lo Menem Leimor. What does it say Leimor? Normally it says Vaydav Hashem El Moshe Leimor, to tell people to tell to the Bnei Yisrael. El Shahai Yisrael Einin. So what it was for Lamanem and Lame. It was saying Lame over here. El Shahai Yisrael Einin Achrav Shel Moshe Al Kol Dover V'Dover. So the Bnei Yisrael, when they were saying Shir, they answered after Moshe and everything that he said. They repeated it. Kikonis Hal, like they read Hal. Ashir Hashem Ki Go Go. Okay. Kach Nema Lema. That's what it says. Lema. And the Chemia Mikikonis Shema. They did it, but they did it in the style that you say Shemain. Or Yikorin Loik Yikorin Hal, not like to read Hal. So the Pnei Moshe explains that Korin as Shema is that. I just read from the Pnei Moshe, B'Bavli Mefarish B'Praisa, Kesoife Apoiris Al Shema B'Beis HaKnesses. Like the Chazan, Shu Pesach Tchila V'Heina Nachra V'Koyin Kol Yachad. So he starts off, and then they all say it together. That's how they said that's what they said a shir. In other words, they're all mechavim with Ruach HaKodesh to the same words. So the Gemara, Rabbi Yom Dosh Rabbi Kiva, Oz Yerushalmi Moshe V'Gomer. So the Gemara starts off like we just said. L'cotton shu makris ahal. The cotton is being makra hal bebeis hasefer. Ve'enu nachrov al kol davar. So you have the cotton reading it, and then they repeat each word after him. Moshe Amar Oshira. So Gemara gives an example. V'heinu nachrov Oshira. Moshe Amar Ozi. V'heinu Amrim Ozi. Reb Lazar ben should be asik lili. I'm legadol shu makris ahal bebeis hakneses. V'heinu nachrov davar risha. No, it's actually more medama to a gadol who's leading the tefillah on the Beis HaKnesses, and they would answer him the first word that he said, Moshe Amar Ashira, V'heim Amar Ashira, Moshe Amar Ozi, V'hein Machrov Ashira again. V'yosi Aglili Omer B'shoshay V'sein B'yam, V'yimut Aloil Birka Shalima. So there's a little bit of an older baby who was being held by his mother. V'tinik Yonik Mishteima, there was a tinik nursing V'kivin Sharos Shechina. Right when they saw the Shechina, Gvia Oilos Roishay Birka Shalima. So the kid picked up his head from his mother was holding him. V'shem tatinik es piv midada shlima, and the tinik stopped nursing. And half ein paschas pim, they opened up a shir and they also start saying shir v'shvach v'shevach v'amru zeh keli v'anveyu. So even the baby said shir. V'meyo im afilu ubrin memei moisein hoyom shir. Even the ubit, the fetuses were saying shir. Now it says v'makalo is baruch hu lakim Hashem mimekar Yisrael. So mimekar Yisrael, darshan from the mekar Yisrael. So for even a fetus. Reb Nechemia b'shosha olav asinu min hayom ro pigrein oshim chatom shoyim mishavdim behem befarech ba'avoid kosher. V'kulam pigrim mesim v'shlach masfas yom. So they saw the tormentors, the Egyptians that had tormented them in Egypt, and they saw them there lying. Their bodies were lying on the asfas hayom. Big shuloim ashira. So they wanted to say Shira v'shar salein ruach hakodesh v'afilu cotton shebi Yisrael ha'im Shira kamoisha. Even a cotton said Shira. So all said Shira together. Adori diksiv v'yizki me oila Moshe amoy ayem alamayim es haroya hatzoin. En ksiv kan eles roya tzoino. It doesn't say it's roya tzoin. It says roya tzoino. Malamet shasa kulam royim. They all became royim. Those we all became leaders. Matam eloim aleim. What is leimor? Lema means ladairis. In other words, if you say they held it together, what's lema? Lema, if they repeated it, that's one thing. But if you're holding that they all said the shira together, so what's lema? Lema means ladairis. In other words, that in the future we should learn from here that when there's a gula, so you say hal. You have to sing shira. Rav B'Shem Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina Kadem Psuka Moshe Amar Shira V'heina Nachrav Ashira Lashem Ki Goy Go Susarech Meruyam. In other words, they mechav Moshe said the first word, and they mechav into the rest of the pasuk. Moshe Amar Ozi V'Zimras V'heina Nachrav Ozi V'Zimras Ka. Right. So what does that mean? Snadvu Roshi Kishay Kodesh Baruch Hu Oislam Nisin Yu Amim Shiva. So Snadvu Roshi they're supposed to say when there's a gula you say Shiva. You can understand. Hatevan of Regulus Mitzrayim. They didn't say Shiva. They left Mitzrayim. No Shani Hishi Tchilas Gulas, and that was the beginning of the gula. The Yamsuf was the end of the gulas. That's why he said Shiva then. Hateva, and what are you talking about? Regulus Mordechai Esther. There was no Shiva there. Shani Hisha Hoiva Chutzlords. So in the nest that happened to Chutzlords, you don't say Shiva. So another answer he says the reason they didn't say Shiva is because they were only nigal from Haman, but not from the Shiva of the Malchus.